I knew something was wrong before I even pulled off the county road. Maybe it was the lights. Maybe it was the fact that I could see polished black iron where there had never been anything except cedar trees and gravel. But the second I turned my truck toward home, my stomach dropped straight through the floor. There was a gate. A tall wrought iron gate with stone pillars on both sides and a keypad mounted on a steel post like I was trying to enter some private resort. And hanging right in the center was a wooden sign carved in elegant script. Cedar Ridge Estates. Private wedding venue. For a second, I honestly thought I'd taken the wrong turn. I actually backed up 10 feet and looked around like maybe my brain had stopped working. But no, that was my driveway. The same gravel road I'd been driving up every day for almost 16 years. The same stretch of land I'd repaired after storms, spread fresh stone on every spring, shoveled in winter, cursed it every time the rain washed a rut through it. And now it looked like somebody had turned it into the entrance to a wedding magazine. Fresh asphalt, landscape lighting, decorative white birch trees lining both sides. A little attendant booth near the bend where my mailbox used to sit. I killed the engine and just stared. Then a woman in a navy blazer came walking over like she'd been expecting me. Perfect hair, clipboard in hand, smile sharp enough to cut drywall. "Hi there," she said. "Can I help you?" I stepped out of the truck. "Yeah," I said. "You can start by explaining why there's a gate on my driveway." Her smile twitched. Then she switched into that corporate voice people use when they're pretending they're being helpful. "This entrance is now managed by Cedar Ridge Hospitality Group. We recently completed renovations for the estate venue next door." "Next door?" I repeated. "Correct. And this road," she tapped her clipboard, "transferred as part of the easement agreement." I just looked at her, then laughed. Not because it was funny, because when something is so absurd your brain can't process it, laughter kind of escapes on its own. "You think this belongs to you?" "I'm saying," she replied calmly, "that legal access rights were conveyed through the previous owner of the neighboring parcel." Then she slid paperwork through the bars. Typed. Stamped. Official looking. According to the document, the former owner next door had transferred roadway access to Cedar Ridge 6 months earlier as part of the sale, which would have been interesting if she'd actually owned it. She kept talking. Apparently, they'd converted the entire neighboring 40-acre property into a luxury wedding venue. Ceremonies by the lake. Private catering. Bridal suites. Weekend bookings starting at 30 grand. And my driveway, my actual driveway, was now their primary guest entrance. Then she hit me with the part that made my hands go cold. "If you need access to your home," she said, "you can apply for a resident keypad code through management." Apply. To get into my own house. I stared at her. "You're joking. Weekday access is generally available between 9 and 4. And weekends." She gave me a polite little shrug. "Weekends are reserved for events." I swear there was a ringing sound in my ears. Because beyond that gate, through the trees, I could literally see SUVs unloading flower arrangements where deer used to cross. A catering truck. People hanging string lights. My driveway had become a business. Without anyone asking me. Without a phone call. Without so much as a note taped to my front door. I folded the paperwork and shoved it into my jacket. Then I asked one question. "Where's Margaret Lawson?" That got a pause. Margaret had owned the neighboring land for decades. Sweet woman. Lived alone. Fed birds on the porch every morning. She'd sold the place 6 months earlier and moved closer to her daughter. The blazer woman cleared her throat. "She's no longer associated with the property." Clearly. I walked off before I said something I'd regret. There's an old trail through the trees behind the creek that cuts around the road and reaches my back fence. I used it once in hunting season years ago. That afternoon I used it to get home. And with every branch I pushed aside, every muddy step through those woods, I got angrier. Not loud angry. Not explosive angry. The kind that settles low and steady. The dangerous kind. By the time I got inside, I pulled my deed box from the hall closet. I sat at the kitchen table, spread out every closing document from 2010, and started reading. Half an hour later, I found it. Then I called Claire Mercer, best property attorney in the county. Claire had helped a friend with a boundary fight years back. Sharp woman. Dry sense of humor. Didn't waste words. She picked up on the second ring. "Claire Mercer. Hey, this is Ethan Carter. Tell me you didn't accidentally shoot someone over a fence line." "Not today." That made her laugh. Then I explained everything. Gate. Venue. Paperwork. Keypad. The whole thing. There was silence for about 30 seconds while she read the photos I texted over. Then she laughed. Not a chuckle, a full honest laugh. And she said, "Ethan, they just spent a fortune building a wedding entrance on land they don't legally own." I leaned back in my chair. What? You own the roadway. Margaret only had a residential easement. That easement specifically limits access to private residential use. No commercial operations. No event traffic. No business development. I sat there, heart pounding. Claire kept reading. Then she whistled. Oh, this gets better. Better. If they converted that parcel into a wedding venue, yeah. Their easement terminated automatically the second they started commercial use. I didn't say anything. Didn't need to. Because outside my kitchen window, I could already see venue staff moving under the lights. And Claire said the one sentence that changed the whole week. Legally speaking, Ethan, every inch of that entrance now belongs entirely to you. And for the first time all afternoon, I smiled. Because Cedar Ridge had their grand opening Saturday night. 200 guests. A local celebrity bride. Press coverage. And unless they figured out another way in, they were about to discover exactly who owned the road. Claire had the formal notice drafted before sunrise. That's one thing I always liked about her. She didn't dramatize anything, didn't pound the table or promise revenge like some TV lawyer. She just got terrifyingly efficient. By 8:30 Friday morning, Cedar Ridge Hospitality had a signed legal notice on company letterhead delivered to their office and another copy taped directly to that brand new iron gate. Termination of easement due to unauthorized commercial use. Trespass. Unauthorized permanent improvements. 72 hours to remove all structures from my property. Immediate legal action if ignored. Simple. Clean. Brutal. I made coffee and watched through the trees. And for about 3 hours, nothing happened. Workers kept moving chairs. Florists unloaded hydrangeas. A landscaping crew planted decorative shrubs directly into my shoulder ditch like they'd never seen the notice. Then right around noon, a black Range Rover rolled up. Out stepped a guy in a charcoal suit with slicked-back silver hair and the kind of expensive sunglasses that usually come with a bad attitude. He walked straight up my porch. Didn't knock. Just stood there while I opened the screen door. "Mr. Carter." "That's me. Daniel Reeves. Cedar Ridge Legal Counsel." He smiled like we were old friends. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." "Funny. That's exactly what your gate said." He ignored that, then held out the paperwork. "We purchased access rights lawfully through the previous landowner." "No," I said. "You bought paperwork from someone who didn't own the land underneath." His jaw tightened. Margaret Lawson represented that access rights were transferable, and Margaret was wrong. He shifted gears. "Mr. Carter, we have our first event tomorrow evening. High-profile clients. Significant contractual obligations. We'd appreciate cooperation while we sort this out." "Cooperation?" He nodded. "We can offer a monthly access fee." I almost laughed. Yesterday they were telling me to apply for permission to enter my own property. Now suddenly they wanted cooperation. Not interested. His smile disappeared. "This doesn't need to become hostile." I leaned against the doorframe. "You paved over my land, put a gate on my driveway, and told me I couldn't use weekends." That one landed. He looked irritated now. "We believed we had legal authority. Then your legal department should have read better." He lowered his voice. Dragging this into court could become expensive for everyone. And there it was. The quiet threat. I nodded. "Then I guess you'd better start reading Claire's notice." He stared at me for another second, then turned and walked off. By 5 that afternoon, I still hadn't heard anything official. No calls. No negotiations. No crews removing structures. Nothing. Which told Claire everything. "They think you're bluffing." We sat at my kitchen table with the paperwork spread out. She tapped the easement language. Commercial use terminated their rights instantly. So they know. Oh, they know. Then why ignore it? She gave me a dry little smile. Because wealthy people sometimes mistake confidence for ownership. Outside, workers were hanging chandeliers inside a white reception tent. You could hear music testing over outdoor speakers. A string quartet rehearsing. A wedding planner barking orders. Claire looked toward the window. "When's the ceremony?" "Saturday, 7 p.m. She folded the paperwork. "If they don't contact us by tomorrow afternoon," she didn't finish. Didn't need to. I already knew. Saturday came warm and clear. Perfect weather. Blue sky. No wind. The kind of expensive-looking sunset wedding weather photographers dream about. At noon, I watched black SUVs start arriving. Vendors, staff, decor teams. A catering van backed up near the entrance. Then around 3:30, the first guests began trickling in. Women in silk dresses, men in tailored suits, luxury cars lining the road. Every single one driving over my land like none of this had anything to do with me. I stood on my porch with a glass of iced tea. Calmer than I expected. Not angry anymore. Just very, very certain. At 4:45, Claire called. No response. Okay. You sure? Absolutely. Sheriff's office already has copies of the deed and notice. Good. Then she paused. Ethan? Yeah. Try not to enjoy this too much. I laughed. No promises. I grabbed my truck keys. My old Ford had seen better years. Paint faded. Bench seat cracked. Suspension noisy. But she still ran like a machine. I drove slow. Past the trees. Down the lane. Toward the gate. Venue staff were rushing around setting candles. Golf carts moving guests. Music drifting through the air. Nobody really noticed me until I pulled straight into the middle of the entrance and parked sideways across the entire roadway. Engine off. Keys in pocket. Done. The attendant at the booth stared, then sprinted toward me. So you can't park there. Looks parked to me. This entrance needs to remain clear. No kidding. He panicked and radioed someone. Within 2 minutes, the wedding planner arrived. Mid-30s. Designer suit. Headset. Absolute chaos in human form. She came flying toward me. Move the truck right now. No, you're blocking guest access. Yes. You can't do this. I pointed at the gravel shoulder. My land. Her face went pale. Then she started yelling into her headset. Cars backed up instantly. Guests trapped at the road. Caterers boxed in. Florists carrying huge arrangements standing frozen. A valet nearly clipped a decorative planter trying to reverse. Then the bride's limousine arrived. White. Long, ridiculously polished. And stopped dead. The planter looked like she might pass out. The limo door opened. Bride stepped out. Tall. Elegant. Hair and makeup perfect. And immediately furious. What is happening? The planner rushed over whispering. The bride looked at me. Then at the truck. Then back at me. You're kidding. No, ma'am. This ceremony starts in 90 minutes. I know. You can't ruin this. I kept my voice calm. Tell Cedar Ridge to call my attorney. That did not go over well. Within 15 minutes, the whole venue felt like a hornet nest. Phones ringing. Guests milling around confused. Someone crying near the catering trailer. The florist looked like she wanted to murder everyone. Then Daniel Reeves showed up again. Same suit. No sunglasses this time. Sweating. Mr. Carter, move the vehicle. No, this is absurd. You had 2 days. We are prepared to discuss compensation. You were yesterday too. His voice tightened. What do you want? Not here. He stepped closer. We have media on site. Then maybe don't trespass. And right then a county sheriff cruiser rolled up. Deputy Nolan. Good guy. Been around forever. Daniel practically ran to him. This man is obstructing access. Nolan looked at my truck. Looked at me. Afternoon, Ethan. Hey, Nolan. Daniel shoved paperwork toward him. Nolan read it. Then I handed him my deed packet and Claire's notice. He read that too. Long pause. Then he handed Daniel's papers back and said, calm as rain. He owns the road. Daniel blinked. Nolan shrugged. He can park wherever he wants on his own property. The planter behind him actually made a choking sound. The bride started pacing. Guests were pulling out phones. A photographer began filming. One older woman near the gate whispered loud enough for everyone. I told you this place looked rushed. And suddenly that wedding had turned into a public disaster. Traffic backed halfway onto the county road. Guests started leaving. One groomsman cracked a joke. Nobody laughed. Daniel's phone rang. He answered. Went pale. Then looked at me. Really looked at me for the first time all weekend. And quietly asked, what are your terms? I checked my watch. 6 p.m. 1 hour before ceremony. Golden sunlight hitting the trees. String quartet silent. Bride furious. Guests restless. And every second costing Cedar Ridge money. I folded my arms. Then smiled. Have your CEO call Claire. And Daniel turned and ran. Daniel was already dialing before he reached the gate. You could feel the entire place tightening up around him. Like everybody suddenly understood the same thing at once. This wasn't some irritated neighbor making a scene. This wasn't a misunderstanding. And it definitely wasn't going away. I stayed leaning against my truck while the sun started dipping lower over the trees. The string lights had already come on. Warm amber across the lawn. Beautiful setup. Honestly, they'd done an incredible job, which somehow made the whole thing even funnier. Because none of it mattered if nobody could get through the entrance. The bride was pacing near the limo, heels sinking into the gravel shoulder, muttering to herself. The planner looked seconds away from tears. Guests had formed little clusters, talking and checking phones. The photographer was absolutely loving it. He kept snapping pictures like he'd stumbled into a reality show. Deputy Nolan stood by his cruiser sipping coffee like he'd been handed front-row tickets. Then my phone rang. Claire. I answered. You there? Yep. Cedar Ridge CEO is on my other line. And he sounds expensive and miserable. That made me grin. Claire continued. He wants immediate access. Good. He also wants this resolved quietly. Even better. Then she lowered her voice. Give me final numbers. I looked toward the venue. A violinist sat waiting under the arbor. Servers frozen with trays. Guests restless. That giant carved welcome sign glowing under lanterns. And I thought about walking through the woods to reach my own home. Being told to apply for a keypad code. Being locked out of land I'd paid taxes on for over a decade. Then I gave Claire my terms. First, every structure built on my land gate. Booth. Landscaping. Lighting removed within 7 days. Second, a new commercial easement drafted properly. $5,000 a month. Paid in advance for 5 years. Third, full reimbursement for legal fees and damages. And fourth, the important one. If Cedar Ridge ever interfered with my access again, even once I retained the legal right to revoke their easement with 30 days' notice. Claire was quiet for 1 second. Then she said, perfect, and switched calls. I waited. The bride was now openly yelling at Daniel. The planner had tears running down her face. Someone from catering sat on an ice chest with their head in their hands. A black Escalade tried backing out and almost clipped the flower arch. Then 5 minutes later Claire called back. He agreed. Just like that. No debate. No negotiation. No corporate speech. He agreed to all of it? Every word. Get it signed. It's already being emailed. I looked at the sky. Sun dropping lower. A breeze finally moving through the trees. Then I opened my truck door, started the engine, and slowly pulled aside. The sound that followed was instant. Engine starting, people moving, golf carts racing, planners screaming directions, valets sprinting. It looked like somebody had kicked over an anthill wearing formal wear. Cars poured through. Guests rushed inside. Florists running. Servers moving trays. And that bride flew past in her limo looking like she wanted to sue half the county. Ceremony started about 90 minutes late. I watched the whole thing from my porch with a beer. Could hear music drifting over the hill. Could hear applause when they finally said their vows. And honestly, I felt pretty peaceful. Not triumphant. Not angry. Just settled. Like something had clicked back into place. The next week was even better. Monday morning crews showed up. By noon the iron gate was gone. Tuesday the booth disappeared. Wednesday decorative trees got dug out. Thursday, the asphalt edges were repaired where they'd cut into my shoulder. Friday morning, Daniel Reeves himself walked up my porch carrying an overnight envelope and looking like he hadn't slept in 3 days. He handed it over. Inside was the signed easement agreement and a cashier's check. $350,000. Daniel loosened his tie. Mr. Carter, yeah. This could have gone smoother. I looked at him, then looked toward the empty roadside where their fancy gate used to stand. Could have. He gave one tired nod, then said something I still think about. We really did believe we had the rights. And for a second, I actually believed him. Because sometimes people with enough money stop asking questions. They assume paperwork means ownership. Assume construction means permission. Assume confidence fills in the legal blanks. I folded the check. Then next time read slower. That almost made him smile. Then he left. Cedar Ridge still operates today. Booked nearly every weekend spring through fall. Luxury weddings, corporate retreats, photo shoots, and every single vehicle that comes through uses that same road. My road. The difference now is simple. Nobody locks my gate. Nobody tells me when I can come home. And every month, right on schedule, payment clears. Funny thing is, a few folks around town think I was too hard on them. That I embarrassed the bride. That I should have let the ceremony happen first and handled it quietly later. Maybe, Maybe they're right. I did feel bad for her. She didn't create the mess. And if I'm honest, seeing her standing there in a wedding dress while her planner panicked wasn't exactly the highlight of my week. But then I remember standing outside that iron gate with hardware store receipts on my passenger seat, reading a sign telling me my own driveway was private property, and hearing some stranger explain I could request weekday access to my own house. That part sticks with me. Real hard. Because mistakes happen. Paperwork gets messy. People misunderstand land all the time. But building an entire business on somebody else's property and assuming they'll just smile and accept it, that's something different. So I'm curious what you think. Did I go too far parking that truck there 4 hours before the ceremony? Would you have waited until after the wedding? Or done the exact same thing? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I know this one splits people right down the middle, and if you've ever dealt with entitled neighbors, shady property lines, or somebody treating your land like it belongs to them, hit subscribe, because trust me, this wasn't the last wild property fight this county ever saw.